Welcome to the fastest stop in town. Today on Masechtas Beitzah Daf Lamed Hey, we are going to begin on the very top of Lamed Hey Amud Aleph. Before we do, we need to remind ourselves of our Mishnah on Lamed Daled Amud Aleph that told us, in the name of Rabbi Eliezer, that he said that a person could stand by his opening on Erev Shabbos on Shemitah year, and to be able to make the decoration Mikana ni ochel lamachar, in order to be able to alleviate the issue of hazmana, that he designated and prepared that I'll be able to eat this. The Chachamim required that you actually have to mark off which fruits and say mikan v'ad kan, from here until here. Based on this, we discussed the dinim of trumas and maisers. Typically, when it comes to meiser, it's necessary for it to become an achilas keva. However, if it's an achilas arai, a person's allowed to eat it, even though he has not yet taken off the trumas and maisers. The exception is when it comes to Shabbos. Shabbos is koiveya, kavas, the meiser, that becomes now mechuyev. And the Gemara asks the question, do we also say, when we have a fruit which is shelo nigmar malachto, for example, that you want it to dry out, whether or not we say that Shabbos will also make it as though it's gemar malachto? So we end up saying, indeed that's true, that Shabbos koivas bein b'davar nigmar malachto, bein b'davar shelo nigmar malachto, which means that even though it's not completed, nonetheless it's still going to be chayiv in trumas and maisers. And we try to bring a proof to that from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah told us again that this person could make this decoration on Shemitah. Now, when is he doing this? On Erev Shabbos. So the reason why he's allowed to do this is on Shemitah there is no chiyuv of trumas and maisers. However, if it was any other year, then he would not be able to do so and eat it, because Shabbos will make it considered to be gemar malacha. And we have said that's not necessarily the case. Maybe it has really nothing to do with Shabbos. Rather, just coming to tell you that when you make a declaration like our Mishnah and say mikana ni oichel l'machar, then kavod le'olau, that's what establishes it. It's not the Shabbos. So in that case, why does it mention our Mishnah Erev Shabbos? Just mention any day. So we said to come to tell you that when it comes to tevel, untied food, we say that it's considered to be muchan. We don't say, well, you can't eat it, because technically, even though you're not supposed to separate trumas and maisers on Shabbos, if you did and violated it, it would actually be a good separation. And therefore, that's what the Mishnah is coming to teach us. Okay. With that said, let's now continue with the Lamed Hey Amud Aleph, again, discussing this further. V'alo meiser chayzer. We know that when it comes to this type of situation, that it goes back to the pile if there's leftovers. Says Rashi, even if you took a lot, behold, during the week, and you put in front of you the mixi de kavile biachil maruba, looks like you are being koiveyet, it doesn't make any difference. If you have leftovers, it can go back in the pile. And the koshkein bidibura do masa lo mekabel. The reality is it should go back, so it should not be koiveyet to be mechuyev in trumas and maisers. V'shamin lo Rabbi Eliezer di'emer kol heicha demisru chayzer lo keva. We say that as long as you have extra, you can always put it back, and it's not koiveyet. So it's hard to say that this talking about because you made this verbal declaration, all of a sudden it's now mechuyev in trumas and maisers. How do we see this? That none. Hanoitel zeisim min hamatan. If a person took olives from a vat, toivel achas b'melach v'oichel, you can dip into salt and eat it. And Rashi says below meiser. You don't have to take off any meisers at that time. That we say, even though you're dipping it in salt, we don't consider that keva, because you're only taking one at a time. So that's considered to be a chilas arai. Vim taval v'nosin l'fanav. Let's say again you dipped it but you left it in front of you. Asara chayiv. So in that case you are chayiv, because the fact that you're designating and setting it aside shows that you really want it for a more of a permanent meal. Rabbi Lezer Omer min hamatin tahar. When it comes to one who takes from, again, this vat, which is pure, chayiv. Min hamatin tameh potter. It depends on the status of the vat. So, says Rashi, min hamatin tahar chayiv la'aser. In that situation, you would have to take off meiser. Shin roy l'hachser meiser. Because it's tahar, it's not fit for you to put it back. Because, as Rashi says, we're talking about where the person is tameh. And since he's tameh, he can't put it back since the vat is now tahar. And he can't make the whole vat tameh. So therefore, that's why it's totally whether or not the vat is tameh or tahar, whether you're going to return it. However, again, it says that if, let's say, you do return it, then you're potter from meiser because you're able to put it back. So, as we see, if you're able to put over, you can put back leftovers, and you're not going to be chayiv. The reisha, the vat is tar and the person's tummy, so he's not going to put it back. Because the vat is tameh, even though he's tameh, so it's not a big deal. He can put it back, and the fact that he can put it back, therefore we see that there's no chiyuv of truma. There's no chiyuv of meisus. So the kash is, we clearly see that when it comes to, therefore in our case, where all you did was make a declaration, that should not be koveya. So what was it? Probably Shabbos is what koveya. So masnisa nami b'muksa tahar v'gaver tameh. Our Mishnah is also talking about a situation where the place where he was making this declaration is tahar and the person is tameh. Therefore he cannot return it. The fact that he's holding on to it, he can't put it back to the original location. And therefore you're right. If otherwise he would be able to, then in fact he would not be mechuyev. Don't we say that they are like ready to be returned? You only use speech. He never took it in the first place. So what do you mean don't return it? He never picked it up to begin with. Ella Omer Rav Shimi Barashi Rebbe Lezer Ka'amrit. Your whole question is Lefi Shitas Rebbe Lezer. Rebbe Lezer L'Tamei Yomer Truma Kava V'Kol Shekin Shabbos. He actually holds that Truma is Koveya and Kol Shekin when it comes to Shabbos as well. Look in Rashi. Rebbe Lezer Ka'amrit Minei Maises Siyata de Shabbos Kava Af B'Shaloi Nigmar Malachtan. He's of the opinion that even if there's not Gemar Malacha, it's Koveya. Denan Paris Shitarmon. When it comes to fruits, regarding separating of truma, Adshul Nigmar Malachtan. If let's say it was done before the malacha was completed, in other words, let's say they're still drying. So Rebbe Lezer Oyser L'Echel Mehen Arai. Rebbe Lezer says it's also to eat from them even a Chilos Arai. The Chamim allow it. Now, why does he say that? Because it's considered to be koveya. The reality is, then since even though it's not gemar malacha, he holds it still has the status of being completed in the status that it now is mechuyev and truma. Tashma Mesef Chamim Oimrim Ad Sheyirshim. So our Mishnah said that this decoration is not enough. You actually have to physically have to make a mark and say v'yomer mikan v'ad kan. I'll be taking from here until here. Now Taima the Erev Shabbos b'shvius. It's a very similar question we saw in yesterday's daf. Because it was the Shemitah year, the Labar Sirihu. The reason why I can do this is because he doesn't have any chiv of taking off trumas and meisus because it's the Shemitah year. However, any other of the 6 of the 7 years, the Menei Assyrian, where a person does take off trumas and meisus, Assyrian, we would say that this tevel is aser, my time. Mishum the Shabbos kava. The fact that it mentions Erev Shabbos must be a proof that Shabbos is koveya something, even though it's not gemar malacha. Lo shani hasam kivan diver mekan v'ad kan ani oichel l'macher kavalei. So this is even certainly it's koveya. We said this answer before. According to the other shita, according to the Chachamim, it's not enough to make an oral declaration. You actually have to physically do something. So that certainly will be koveya to be mechuyev in Trumas Meisos, but it has nothing to do with Shabbos. So Ihachi Ma'ir Shabbos, I feel the whole Nami. So why does our Mishnah talk about that you did this on Erev Shabbos? Seemingly it's connected to Shabbos. It must be because it's Shabbos which it creates the chiyuv. No. Hakamashmon the tevel muchan hu itzel Shabbos. Shim aber v'tiknu matukan, as we said before at the end of last Amud, that again, even though you're not supposed to separate Trumas and Meisos, if you did, it's okay. And therefore, because of that, it's considered to be muchan, it's not muksa, and therefore a person is able to make this statement even on Erev Shabbos. Fine. Or minhu. So now the Gemara asks a question. Person is eating this cluster. This person is eating this cluster of grapes. V'nichnas megino chatzer, and he brings it from his garden into his courtyard. Rabbi Lezer Omer Yigmor. Rabbi Lezer says that it should be completed. Says Rashi, Imratza Ligmor b'chatzer, if he wants to finish it up in the courtyard, Yigmor Achilo, so he can finish. The ein chatzer kovas davar shulding b'malachtai, because the fact that you brought it into your chatzer, that doesn't make you now obligated in its separation of trumas, because it has not yet been completed, the process. Yeshua Omer lo Yigmor. A person should not, because he holds no. Your chatzar is koivas davar shudding b'malachto. The fact that you brought it into your chatzar, that's already enough of a declaration that it's considered to be koiveh because you brought it into that place. Chash Chabulei Shabbos. So let's say now it's Friday night, it's dark. Rabbi Lezer Omer Yigmor, Rabbi Yeshua Omer lo Yigmor. So what do we see? We see, according to the sheet of Rabbi Lezer, he says Yigmor. Again, there's no din of kvias, which is a raya that Shabbos doesn't accomplish anything. As Rashi says, the Ein Shabbos koivas davar shudim b'malachtai. It's very clear that that must be the shita, and therefore the reason why our Mishnah says it works is not totally on Shabbos. It's because, as we said, dibureha lo matzinu l'meimar dehar b'lezer meiser chayzer. So Hasam, so we continue in the Gemara. Kedetani taima. It's like we explained. Rav Dasan Omer loy kish Omer Belezer Yigmor b'chatzer Yigmor doesn't mean when Rav Belezer says complete it in the courtyard. Ela yoytze chutz l'chatzer v'Yigmor. You have to actually then bring it outside of your chatzer. V'lo kish Omer Belezer Yigmor b'Shabbos Yigmor el mamtin l'moitzi Shabbos v'Yigmor. You have to actually wait until moitzi Shabbos and then complete it. As we see in Rashi, when we refer to the case on yesterday's daf, it's not comparable to the tinaitis, the kids who hid the figs that we said over there that on Motzi Shabbos he's not allowed to eat them because it's considered to be Shabbos, is what's koiveh those figs. And he says l'achil Shabbos yichidum is because over there they were designated specifically for Shabbos. Hilkach kabalahu avol zeh avol lo yachtel Shabbos. This was not designated specifically for the sake of Shabbos. Those kids hid those figs for the sake of Shabbos. Kiyos Rabbi Rav Yochanan echad Shabbos ve'echad Truma ve'echad Chatzar ve'echad Mekach. When it comes to all these different things, Shabbos, Truma, Chatzar, and Mekach, kulam ein koivin el b'davar shenigmar malachtan. They're only completed when the malach is completed. So Shabbos, why does it say Shabbos lafuki midahilel? Coming to exclude what he said. The Sanya Hamaimer Peiros Mamakum Makom, one who's transporting fruits from one place to another. Again, we're not going to hold like Hil, we're going to hold like the Rabbanan, Liktsar, in order to be able to harvest. The Kiddush Lein Hayoim, and all of a sudden becomes Shabbos. So Rabbi Yehuda Hillel La'atzmo Aser. He said that it was Aser. Says Rashi, Hillel Lavado Aser. Only he. Mash Bechol Daru Cholkanalav. Only Hillel was strict, because according to Hillel, apparently he held that even though it was not Gemar Malacha, nonetheless Shabbos was Koivas. So again, this is not how we hold, but rather like the Shita of the Rabbanan. So therefore, when it comes to Echad Shabbos, the din is that it's only Koiveya on a Davar Shenigmar Malachta. And therefore, even though, unlike what we said before, the din is not like the Shita of Hillel, and therefore, since it's not Gamar Malacha, let's say it's drying out, so the din is that it is not koiveya even though Shabbos comes. Continue on Lamed Hamid Beis. Chutzner, what does that have to do with courtyard? Lafukim with Rabbi Yaakov. What did he say? Did not. Hamavir Te'enim, a person who carried and transported these figs, B'chatzei in his courtyard, Liktsois, in order to dry them out. Now, even though it was brought into his chutzner, so you think maybe the chutzner is what creates this element of being koiveya, and therefore it's a mechuyev and meiser. No, this shows because it's not gemar malacha, because he put them liktzois to dry out, so therefore they're still to eat them because it's still a chilos arai. But Tani law Rabbi Yaakov Machai, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Huda poiter. Truma. What's this third one about truma? Bafukim and Rabbi Elazar. Did not. Perois shitarma. When it comes to fruits that were for separating for truma. Achel nigmar malachdan, before the gmar malacha. Rabbi Elazar oisalecha mehen. Alright, Rabbi Elazar says you're not allowed to eat from them, because apparently at that point, even though it's not gmar malacha, he holds that you're not allowed to eat them because it's your mechuyev. It's considered gemar malacha. You have to do it as though it's gemar malacha. Chalal matirim, we pass it the chachamim. This is no, it's not nigmar malacha, so therefore it's not mechuyev and truma. Mekach, when it comes to transactions, kedesanya. Halokech teinim am aretz. If a person purchases figs from an am aretz, b'makoim sherobinei adam dorsin, in a place where the majority of the people press these figs, which means that they make them into like these cakes, which means at this time, since it hasn't happened yet, it's not gemar malacha. So oich lehenarai umasrin, then you have to eat them. And then masrin demai, and then when you eventually do separate it, you separate on the level of demai. Says Rashi, v'lam rinan hani vadnai lo asri. We don't say that the people definitely didn't separate. The kodim gemar malacha lo asrinhu am aretz. We don't say that for sure he has not separated that. So Shema Mina Tla. Shema Mina Mekachenu Kavas. As we established. Now when it comes to a Mekach, it's only when it's complete. Shema Mina Rob Amaretz Masrin Hain. We see that the majority of Amaratzim do take off Meiser, says Rashi, Midaz Linin Lakua. The fact that we go so lenient and we say that the Meiser that you take off is a Demai level, which means it's a Chomer Ba'alma, then therefore it's not something which is 100%, because we'll assume that actually it was separated. And then Mishma Mina Masrin Demai Mi Am Aretz Afil B'Davar Shul Nigmar Malachto. It will separate Demai from Amaretz even on something which is not Nigmar Malacha. Lafuki Mahadinan, to exclude the following statement. Hamachlet Perois, which as Rashi says Haidu Mekach, one who is engaged in a business transaction with fruits, Im Chavero with his friend, Zel Ochel V'Zel Ochel, this one to eat, this one to eat. Zel liktzois, zel liktzois. This one to dry them out, this one to dry them out. Zel achel, zel liktzois. Or they have different intentions. One wants to eat them right away. One wants to let them dry out, which means it's not nigmar. Chayiv, in this case, you're chayiv because the mekach, the transaction, is what is koveya, even in shalom nigmar. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer le'echol chayiv liktzois pater. As we said, it's only if you have the intention to eat it. Because once you do that, you have the das that this is gemar malacha. However, if it's liktzois, if still you have more to do with it, so therefore you are going to be potter. Okay. Question 11, TB11. Eil devarim koivim l'maiser b'davar shel nigmar malachto l'chad man da'omer. Shabbos, Truma, Chatzar, Mekach. Okay. So those are the three which we just did. That was TB 11. TB 11. Okay. And with that we say Hadunullah Hamevi, Hadunullah Hamevi, Hadunullah Hamevi. We now continue with the fifth and final parak of this Masechta. Mashil and Peros der Charuba. Says Rashi. Mishe Shalchitin v'Sa'irin, person has wheat and barley, Shetaichin al Gago, and he's processing it on the roof, grinding it up. L'syavesh, he put it there so it should dry up. Avarag Yishaman, all of a sudden he sees it's about to rain. Memashmashin uvoyin. So because of that, hitiru l'troach, we allow you to trouble yourself. L'hashlech der charuba. If let's say you have a skylight, when your roof opens up, shibagag vehein noiflin l'aretz deleka tirchi yisera, and you can like basically push it all through the skylight to fall down. Because that's not such a great tircha, then it's okay. But it has to be specifically an aruba. Rashi says abel chalon. However, let's say it's a side window, kigon gag shemukaf machitza v'chalon b'kaisel v'sarach lag biyoi, that you would actually physically have to lift it up out of chalon to get to the window, and then l'hashlicha for it to fall down. Lo tarchinan, that much of a tircha we don't allow. Okay, so let's see the Mishnah. Meshulin peres derech aruba b'yom tov. A person on Yom Tov could, again, if he sees it's about to rain, he could push his fruits through this skylight. Avolo b'Shabbos. When it comes to Shabbos, we're more strict; we don't allow it. Umechasim peros b'kelim imnei. A person can also cover up fruit with a kli, because if there's drippings, and again, Rashi says we don't say that you're teirech shaloi l'tzarich Yom Tov. The show rabbanim mishum hesen mammon, because of a monetary loss, we are lenient. V'chein kadi yain v'kadi shemen. When it comes to jugs of wine and oil, the same din is. We allow you to, if there's a drip, so you can cover it up, so you don't there's no monetary loss. But nice and kli tachas adel for Shabbos, and you can put a kli underneath a drip on Shabbos as well, to be able to catch those drips. That is also something which is allowed. Okay. So Itmar, Rabbi Huda, Rav Nasan, Chad Tani Mashilin, V'Chad Tani Mashchilin. So the question is, what is the first word of this Masechta, of this parak? What is the name of this parak? Is it parak Mashilin, or it could be Mashchilin? So Amar Marzucha, Man Tani Mashilin or Mishtavish. That's not a mistake. Man Tani Mashchilin or Mishtavish. They're both possibly acceptable words to be found in this Mishnah. So Man Tani Mashilin or Mishtavish Taksiv Ki Yishol Zeitzecha, which again has to do with it. Your olives being thrown down. Man Tani Mashchilin or Mishtavish Titnan. Hashchoyel v'haksoyel shchoyel shenishmata yirecho ksoyel shalacher mirchasav gavoa mechaverta. So let's see if Rashi explains what this is referring to. So Yishol, Rashi says, is the lashon of yapil. Haksoyel v'hashchoyel, these are mumim b'bechor. These are all different blemishes which is found in Masechtas Bechoros that take place on a firstborn animal. And these are all different examples. Yishum sarua she'echad me'evar gadol mechavero. If, let's say, for example, one of its limbs is more than the other. Shenishbata yirecho. If, let's say, its thigh was dislocated. And again, it uses the language for shenishmata is a lashon of hashvala, that it fell down. Or she'echad merchavosav gavoa. One of the hips are higher. Makam chabura biksalim. By the flanks, who boka the itma gavo momal and exolim. So again, because of this, their body is not aligned properly. So this is also considered to be a mum in regard to the dinim of a bechor. When it comes to the dinim of a bechor, we are not allowed to shecht it. Even bezman azer b'achiv kares is brought down to Masechtas Bechoros. However, if it develops a mum, then it is allowed. So therefore, again, the reason why we bring this down is to teach us that also this language is also a language of falling, like the fruits fell. That's also an acceptable word for our Mishnah. Rabbi Shmuel Oimer Nazir, when it comes to Nazir, he's not allowed to rub his hair with this particular earth, because it will end up causing his hair to fall out. And obviously, one of the requirements of a Nazir is he has to let his hair grow. That's not a mistake either. That when it comes to the razor, which is something which causes hair to fall out, a razor and scissors, even if they are separated into two parts, so therefore you would think maybe it doesn't have the same din of a kli because it's in two parts, but again, because it could easily be put back together, these two halves of these shears, so therefore it's tameh. It's able to mekabel tumah. Mandatani manshirin lo mishtabish nan mishnishru kelo v'mayim. A person whose vessels fell into water, mahalach behem, you can go to them, v'ein choishish, and we're not concerned. Says Rashi, v'ein misnagvin v'hoychin, and your clothes will dry up. V'ein choishish yichshtu shekivson, that looks like you went in there to launder. V'ein choishish inami mahodit nan ezu leket. What is the leket of that which is in your field? Anything that fell down during the time of the harvest. So again, all these different words could be, in fact, the name of our parak. Tanan, Mashil and Paris there Haruba b'Yomtiv. We said only on Yom Tov are you allowed to push these fruits. Question is ad kama. How many fruits are we allowing? Because if, let's say, you can spend the whole day doing it, that's not really a great way to spend Yom Tov. So it seems to be a great tircha. It's the same amount as that which we learned. A person is allowed to clear out 4 or 5 of these baskets of straw, grain, in order to be able to get space so that guests could go there, or so that people will be able to learn there, so that you have a place for Talmidim to sit. So those that amount is the amount that one is allowed when it comes to also this din of how much you can push. The question is that really a fair comparison? Or is it fair to compare that which you have to physically move out of a place, or to the place of pushing it out a window or out into a skylight? The Domashani house, maybe it's different over there. Maybe the reason why we have a large amount that we're allowed to move is because we realize that we don't want people to not learn. So we're makel. Over here there's no bittul beis medrash, so maybe you're not allowed to move that much fruit off your roof. The reason why all of this is allowed is Shabbos, the Chamira, as we saw at the very beginning of this Masechta, whether the din, there's a Stam Mishnah that when it comes to Yom Tov, there's a din muksa, but not by Shabbos. So, like Rabbi Yehuda or Rabbi Shimon, so it's because Yom Tov in general, because it's more lenient, a person may be mazalzel it. So maybe the reason why we allow all this is because Shabbos is so chomer, a person's not going to be mazalzel. But Yom Tov the keel will be also lazalzel, but kolakol low. Maybe because Yom Tov is something which is more lenient, so a person, if we allow you to do these things, it could even be worse. So maybe we're more strict. Maybe the reason why you're only allowed these 4 or 5 baskets worth to be moved is because there's no financial monetary loss. Maybe in this situation, because there is a hefsin mammon, you're allowed to do even more. So therefore, it's not so clear that we're able to make this comparison as to how much one is able to remove from his roof based on this other case in Masechta Shabbos. Can we compare Shabbos to Yom Tov? The Mishnah itself says it's only on Yom Tov and not on Shabbos. And again, our Mishnah has the advantage of Hefsid. There's a financial loss, Hefsid Mammon, and over there is the advantage of Bittul Beis Medrash. Okay, we're going to stop there. Let's see a couple questions. TB12. Umaksim Paris Mimni Hadelef, Achen Kadiyain V'Kadi Shemen, My Rebusa the Kadiyain V'Shemen. What is the extra things that we'll see in tomorrow's daf? TA11. Devash Shibakairis Im Yeshbo Mishum Isser Muksa Rabbi Yehuda. I do not think we did this. Adkan.